I want to tell you something tonight that might sound almost too simple to be true, but I promise you, if you really hear these words and let them sink deep into your heart, you could wake up tomorrow in an entirely different world. Not because the world changed, but because you did. And when you change, everything changes. There's something I've witnessed time and time again, something so extraordinary it never stops filling me with wonder. I've seen people who were drowning in debt suddenly find money flowing to them from the most unexpected places. I've watched as doors that seemed permanently locked flew open the moment someone spoke the right words with the right feeling behind them. I've seen miracles disguised as coincidences and abundance dressed up as lucky breaks. But here's the truth. None of it was luck. None of it was chance. It was the law in action, responding to the word they spoke. Tonight, before you close your eyes, you're going to speak a word that will set forces in motion that you cannot see, but that are more real than anything you can touch. You're going to plant a seed in the invisible that will bloom in the visible. And by the time we welcome the end of 2025, you're going to look back at this moment and realize this was when everything shifted. But first, you need to understand something crucial about how this works, because most people get this wrong and then wonder why nothing changes. Most people think speaking words is just making sounds with your mouth. They recite affirmations like robots, feeling nothing, believing nothing, just repeating syllables they heard somewhere. And then they sit around waiting for magic that never comes. That's not what I'm teaching you tonight. What I'm about to share with you is about harnessing the most powerful force in your life, a force you've been using unconsciously every single day, sometimes for your benefit and often against yourself. Your word is your wand. Everything you say is casting a spell, shaping your reality, calling forth experiences from the invisible realm where all things already exist and are just waiting for you to claim them. Think about the last time something went wrong in your life. What were the words you spoke immediately before or after? I'm willing to bet they weren't words of triumph and expectation. Most people, when faced with any challenge, immediately begin affirming the very thing they don't want. I can't afford this. This always happens to me. Nothing ever works out. I'm so unlucky. And then they wonder why their circumstances never change. You see, the universe doesn't understand sarcasm. It doesn't recognize complaining as just venting. It takes you literally, absolutely literally. When you say, "I'm broke," the universe says, "Your wish is my command," and delivers more experiences of being broke. When you say, "I never get what I want," you're actually giving a command to the creative force within you to make sure you continue not getting what you want. This isn't punishment. This isn't the universe being cruel. This is law, as impersonal and reliable as the law of gravity. Drop something and it falls. Speak something and it manifests. The universe is neutral. It's a mirror. It's not judging your words as good or bad. It's simply reflecting them back to you as experiences. Now, here's where it gets interesting. And this is what most people miss entirely. You cannot fool the universe with fake positivity or hollow affirmations. You can't say, "I am wealthy," while feeling poor and expect miracles. The power isn't just in the words themselves. The power is in words spoken with conviction, with feeling, with the kind of faith that doesn't question or doubt. I've watched people repeat affirmations 1,000 times with zero result, and then I've watched others speak something once, just once, with complete knowing, and reality reshapes itself around that declaration. What's the difference? One is begging. The other is commanding. One is hoping it might work. The other is stating what already is in the spiritual realm. I've watched this confusion destroy countless demonstrations. Someone will come to me and say, "I've been affirming for weeks that I have perfect health, but nothing's changed." And when I ask them to repeat their affirmation, I hear the tremor in their voice. I hear the doubt underneath the words. They're reciting formulas like children repeating homework, not speaking as someone who knows their good is already theirs. You see, affirmations without realization are just noise. They're empty vessels. But a command spoken from the consciousness that God's supply is infinite and available this very moment, that's power. That's what moves mountains. Let me give you something practical to work with. When you catch yourself in the old pattern of begging, stop immediately. Recognize what you're doing. Then shift your stance entirely. Instead of saying, "Please God, if it be thy will, help me pay this bill," you stand firm and declare, Every bill is paid. There is no lack in God's kingdom, and I am a child of that kingdom. Divine supply now flows to me in avalanches of abundance. Do you feel the difference? One statement positions you as a beggar at the door. The other positions you as the heir walking through it. And here's what people miss. This isn't about arrogance. This isn't about demanding from God as if he were your servant. This is about alignment with spiritual law. You're not commanding God. You're commanding the situation to align with what God has already established as truth. You're the one who gives your word power over circumstances, because your word, when spoken with faith, is God's word moving through you. I'll tell you plainly, prayer that whines never manifests. Prayer that doubts its own power is powerless. But prayer that commands with quiet certainty, that prayer reshapes reality itself. So many of us have been taught that humility means making ourselves small, diminishing our expectations, apologizing for our desires. But true humility is understanding that of yourself. You can do nothing, but through the divine power that works through you, all things are possible. It's recognizing that you're not the source of the power, you're the vessel through which it flows. And a vessel doesn't apologize for being filled. I've watched people shrink themselves their entire lives, believing that making themselves smaller somehow makes them more spiritual. They whisper their desires as if God might be offended by enthusiasm. They apologize for their gifts as if talent were something to be ashamed of. But I ask you, when a rose blooms in full magnificence, does it apologize to the daisies? When the sun shines at full strength, does it dim itself so the candles won't feel inadequate? Your full expression is not a threat to anyone else's light. In fact, when you step fully into your power, you give others permission to do the same. Your success doesn't diminish another's opportunity. This is an abundant universe, not a scarce one. There's enough light for everyone to shine. Now, let's talk about what happens when you stop playing small. When you finally decide that you're done making yourself acceptable to people who are uncomfortable with excellence. When you stop apologizing for knowing what you know and being who you are, something remarkable shifts. The universe has been waiting for this moment. It's been holding back the flood of good that's meant for you, waiting for you to expand your capacity to receive it. You see, you can't pour an ocean into a teaspoon. And when you've been playing small, you've made yourself a teaspoon when you were designed to be a reservoir. The moment you claim your divine inheritance, not with arrogance but with calm certainty, doors that were sealed shut suddenly swing open. Opportunities that passed you by circle back around. People who never saw you suddenly can't look away. This isn't magic. This is spiritual law. You've changed your inner conversation, and the outer world has no choice but to rearrange itself to match. I've seen it happen 1,000 times. The woman who finally stops apologizing for her ambition lands the position she's been qualified for all along. The artist who stops hiding his work suddenly finds the perfect gallery. The entrepreneur who stops playing it safe finally attracts the investors who believe in the vision. You see, the universe doesn't reward hesitation, it rewards decision. It rewards the person who says yes to their own vision before anyone else does. I've watched this truth unfold in the most ordinary circumstances. The mother who decides she's capable of returning to work after years away, suddenly the perfect part-time opportunity appears, with hours that somehow accommodate her schedule exactly. The writer who commits to finishing his manuscript stops encountering interruptions and instead finds pockets of time materializing throughout his day. The woman who declares she deserves a loving partner stops attracting unavailable people and begins meeting those who are emotionally ready. This isn't wishful thinking. This is spiritual law in action. What you must understand is that your declaration creates a frequency, and that frequency acts as a tuning fork in the invisible realm. When you announce your intention with conviction, not hope, not wishing, but certainty, you set forces in motion that were waiting for your signal. Think of it like this. Imagine you're standing in a vast warehouse filled with every possible resource, connection, and opportunity you could ever need. But the lights are off, and you can't see what's available. Your declaration, your clear intention, is the switch that illuminates your section of the warehouse. Suddenly, you can see the tools, the people, the pathways that were there all along. But here's what stops most people. They flip the switch, the lights come on, and instead of walking forward to claim what they see, they start questioning. Is this really for me? Maybe I should wait. What if I'm not ready? What if someone more deserving needs this? And in that moment of doubt, the lights flicker. Not because the universe is punishing you, but because you've changed your signal. You've shifted from certainty to uncertainty, and the frequency has altered. I knew a man who wanted to start a business helping families organize their estates. He had the knowledge, the compassion, the skill. But for 3 years, he told himself he needed more training, more credentials, more proof that he was ready. Then one day, after a particularly difficult situation with his own family, he simply decided. He announced to himself, "I am doing this now. People need this help, and I'm the one to provide it." Within 2 weeks, a friend mentioned his services at a community meeting. Within a month, he had 4 clients. Within 6 months, he had more work than he could handle alone. Nothing about his qualifications had changed. What changed was his internal declaration, his willingness to claim the role that was already his. Your word always comes back to you. Not eventually, not if you're lucky, always. It returns clothed in the very substance you sent it out wearing. Send out words of lack, and lack greets you at every turn. Send out words of abundance, and watch how the universe reorganizes itself to match your declaration. I've watched people sabotage the most magnificent opportunities simply because they couldn't stop rehearsing their limitations out loud. They'll receive an invitation, an opening, a genuine chance, and immediately begin explaining to anyone who'll listen why it probably won't work out. Why they're not quite ready, why the timing isn't perfect, and then they're shocked when the opportunity dissolves. They blame circumstances, bad luck, other people. But the truth is simpler and more empowering than that. They withdrew their own acceptance through the words they spoke. There was a woman who came to one of my gatherings, desperate for a change in her living situation. She despised her apartment, the noise, the neighbors, the entire atmosphere. And she told everyone about it. Constantly, her friends, her family, strangers in the elevator. She became known as the woman who hated where she lived. I asked her a simple question. What do you want instead? And she looked at me as though I'd asked her to solve an impossible riddle. She knew what she didn't want. She had catalogued every complaint in extraordinary detail, but she had never once spoken clearly about what she did want. Her words had been entirely devoted to reinforcing the very situation she claimed to despise. I gave her an assignment. For 30 days, she was forbidden from speaking negatively about her living space. Not to suppress her feelings, but to redirect her creative energy. Instead, she was to speak only about the home she desired, describing it as though it already existed, using present tense language that made it real. She resisted at first. It felt dishonest, she said, like lying. But I reminded her, you've been lying all along by claiming limitation as your truth. Now you're simply choosing a different lie, one that serves your highest good. Within those 30 days, 3 separate housing opportunities appeared. One through a friend she hadn't spoken to in years. One through a notice she normally would have walked right past. And one through what she could only call coincidence. Though I assure you, coincidence is simply God's way of remaining anonymous. She moved into a place beyond what she'd even dared to imagine. Not because the universe suddenly decided to favor her, but because her words stopped blocking what was trying to reach her all along. And here's what most people miss about this whole thing. They think it's about willpower. About gritting your teeth and forcing yourself to think positive thoughts while everything's falling apart around you. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about something much simpler and infinitely more powerful. I'm talking about awareness. Just noticing. Just catching yourself in the act. You don't have to be perfect. You don't have to monitor every single thought that crosses your mind like some kind of mental prison guard. You just have to start paying attention to the statements you make out loud. The declarations you repeat to yourself. The stories you tell about who you are and what's possible for you. Because here's the thing about words. They work whether you believe in them or not. I've seen it happen over and over again. Someone tells me they don't believe in any of this. They think it's nonsense. But they're willing to try it anyway, just to prove me wrong. And they start changing their language. Not because they're convinced, but because what do they have to lose? And then, weeks later, they come back completely baffled. I don't understand, they say. Things are different now. Opportunities are showing up. People are responding to me differently. But I didn't really believe it would work. And I tell them what I'm telling you now. It doesn't matter if you believe it. Your subconscious mind doesn't need your intellectual approval. It just responds to the instructions you give it. When you say, I always mess this up, your subconscious says, got it. Messing this up is what we do. I'll make sure that happens. When you say, things are working out for me, your subconscious says, understood. I'll start filtering reality to show you evidence of that. It's not mystical. It's mechanical. Your words are the programming language of your internal operating system. And right now, most people are running on corrupted code that was installed decades ago. Code that says, be realistic. Don't get your hopes up. Expect the worst and you won't be disappointed. Better safe than sorry. That code is keeping you safe. All right. Safe from everything you actually want. So let me ask you something. When was the last time you spoke about yourself the way you'd speak about someone you deeply respected? When was the last time you described your life in terms of what's working instead of what's broken? Because most of us have been trained to do the opposite. We've been taught that humility means diminishing ourselves, that realism means focusing on problems, that being honest requires cataloging every flaw and failure in excruciating detail. But that's not honesty. That's self-sabotage dressed up in modest clothing. True honesty recognizes both the challenge and the potential. It sees the obstacle and the opening. It acknowledges where you are while affirming where you're headed. I once knew a woman who was drowning in debt. Every conversation, every thought, every prayer was saturated with lack. I'm so broke, I'll never get ahead. Money just disappears. And predictably, it did. Opportunities fell through. Unexpected expenses arrived like clockwork. Her words were creating a perfect mold, and the universe was filling it exactly as specified. Then something shifted. She didn't deny her situation, but she changed her description of it. Instead of I'm broke, she began saying, I'm building financial freedom. Instead of I never have enough, she declared, money flows to me easily and naturally. Within 3 months, she'd received an unexpected promotion. Within 6, she'd paid off half her debt. Within a year, she had savings for the first time in her adult life. Nothing magical happened except this. She stopped using her words to reinforce her prison and started using them to build her palace. Your words are either building or destroying, creating or demolishing, opening doors or slamming them shut. There is no neutral. There is no just talking. Every syllable is a brushstroke on the canvas of your experience. And here's what makes this so powerful. You don't have to wait for circumstances to change before you change your words. You change your words, and the circumstances follow. You become the architect, not the archaeologist. You're not digging through the ruins of what went wrong, you're designing what comes next. I've watched people transform their entire financial reality simply by stopping the poverty talk. A woman once told me she couldn't afford new shoes. Every day, she said it. I can't afford shoes, I can't afford anything. Money just disappears. And money obeyed her perfectly. It disappeared. Then she began to speak differently. Not with affirmations she didn't believe, but with simple, honest statements of what she intended. I am provided for, my needs are met. Supply flows to me easily. Within weeks, unexpected money came, a forgotten refund, a gift from a relative, a small opportunity that led to more. The universe doesn't question your orders, it fulfills them. This isn't about pretending problems don't exist. It's about refusing to give them a permanent address in your vocabulary. There's a vast difference between acknowledging a challenge and enshrining it. When you say, I'm going through a difficult time, but I'm finding my way through, you're stating a fact while pointing toward movement. When you say, my life is a disaster, everything always goes wrong for me, you've just signed a lease with suffering. Your words create agreements with the invisible forces that shape your days. Think of them as contracts. Every time you declare, I never, or I always, or I can't, you're signing your name to those terms. And the universe is a meticulous lawyer, it holds you to every clause. So what do you do with the worry, the fear, the genuine concern that bubbles up? You don't suppress it, you redirect it. When anxiety rises and wants to spill out as catastrophe, pause. Take that energy and channel it into a different statement. Instead of what if everything falls apart, ask, what if everything is working out in ways I can't yet see? Same emotional intensity, completely different destination. I knew a man who was terrified of losing his business. Every conversation was doom. The economy is terrible, no one is buying. I'll be ruined. His fear was real, but his words were making it more real. I suggested he speak only of what he wanted to see, even if he had to whisper it at first. Customers are coming. Sales are flowing. I am supported. He resisted. It felt like lying. But I reminded him. His disaster predictions were also just stories, and they hadn't happened yet either. So why not tell a better story? He started small, just that one phrase when the panic rose. I am supported. And here's what astonished him. Within 2 weeks, a former colleague reached out with a consulting opportunity. Nothing huge, but enough. Then his landlord, unprompted, offered to reduce his rent temporarily. Then a tax refund he'd forgotten about arrived. Were these miracles, or had they always been possible, and his fortress of fear had simply made him blind to them? This is the part that unsettles people. Because if our words and thoughts are shaping our experience, then we must take responsibility. Not blame responsibility. There's a difference. Blame says, you created your suffering, shame on you. Responsibility says, you have more power than you knew. What will you do with it? I've watched people transform chronic illness by changing the story they tell about their body. Not through denial, through partnership. Instead of, my body is betraying me, they whisper, my body is communicating. It's trying to protect me. What does it need? The body responds. It always responds to love. I've seen relationships resurrect when someone stops the mental loop of, they never listen, they don't care, this is hopeless, and begins instead, there is goodness here. We are finding our way. Love is present. Not as delusion, but as invitation. As a hand extended in the dark. The universe is not a vending machine, and I am not peddling spiritual bypassing. You cannot simply chant pretty words over a burning building and expect it not to burn. But you can choose whether you tell yourself you'll never recover from the ashes, or whether you say, something new wants to be built here. I am the architect of what comes next. That is the part of you that learns to speak in alignment with what you're building, not what you're afraid of losing. And here's where people get tripped up. They think speaking faith means pretending everything is perfect. It doesn't. It means you stop rehearsing the disaster. You stop narrating your life like a tragedy in progress. You stop giving voice to every fear that walks through your mind as if it deserves a microphone. I've watched people lose opportunities not because they weren't qualified, but because they talked themselves out of it before they even tried. I'm not ready. I'm not good enough. They'll probably pick someone else. And the universe, ever faithful, said, your word is law, and gave them exactly what they claimed. Your words aren't just describing your reality, they're coding it. Every statement is a command. Every declaration is a blueprint. And most people are walking around issuing commands they'd be horrified to see executed, simply because they don't realize the power running through their mouths. So let me ask you this. If someone recorded everything you said about yourself this week, every offhand comment, every joke at your own expense, every anxious prediction, and then told you that recording was going to become your actual life, would you be excited, or would you beg to take it back? Because here's the truth. You don't get a different life than the one you speak. You don't rise above your own narrative. The story you tell becomes the world you live in. Not someday. Not eventually. Right now. Always. And I'm not saying you have to be perfect. I'm saying you have to be intentional. There's a difference between acknowledging a challenge and building an identity around it. Between stating a fact and weaving a prison with your tongue. You can say, this is hard right now, and I'm learning how to move through it, without saying, I always fail at this. Nothing ever works for me. I'm cursed. One opens a door, the other bolts it shut and swallows the key. And here's what most people miss. Both statements are equally powerful. The universe doesn't judge your words. It doesn't say, oh, this one's worthy and that one's not. It simply says, yes. It's an echo chamber of perfect agreement. When you declare, I am surrounded by divine opportunities, life conspires to prove you right. When you insist, nobody ever helps me, you'll find yourself strangely isolated, overlooked, blind to the outstretched hands all around you. I've watched this play out in the most remarkable ways. A woman once told me she could never find good help, not in her home, not in her business, nowhere. Everyone I hire is unreliable, she said, with absolute conviction. And sure enough, her employees were a revolving door of disappointment. But here's the thing. Her sister, living in the same city, with the same resources, kept saying, I always attract the most wonderful, loyal people. And she did. Same city, same circumstances. Different words, different worlds. The sister wasn't lucky. She wasn't more deserving. She'd simply learned the great secret. Your word is your wand. You're casting spells every moment of every day, whether you realize it or not. Now, you might be thinking, but I can't just lie to myself. I can't say I'm wealthy when my bank account is empty. I can't say I'm healthy when I'm in pain. And you're right. You can't fool yourself with hollow affirmations that your whole being rejects. But here's the key. You're not lying. You're selecting. You're choosing which reality to feed, which timeline to step into. When you say, I am now in the process of attracting perfect health, you're not denying your current experience. You're simply refusing to cement it as your permanent identity. You're opening a door instead of building a monument to your pain. Your subconscious mind is listening to every word you speak, especially the words you speak about yourself. It's taking notes. It's building your tomorrow based on the blueprint you're handing it today. Give it words of lack, and it will construct a life of scarcity with absolute precision. Give it words of abundance, faith, and expectation, and watch it move heaven and earth to match that vision. I've seen people transform their entire financial situation simply by changing what they speak over their money. Instead of saying, I can't afford it, they began declaring, money flows to me easily and abundantly. Instead of, I'm always broke, they spoke, I am a magnet for prosperity and unexpected income. And you know what happened? Within weeks, opportunities began appearing. Promotions they hadn't asked for. Refunds they'd forgotten about. Clients calling out of nowhere. The universe wasn't withholding from them before it was simply matching the poverty consciousness they were broadcasting. Your words are setting the thermostat for your life experience. If you keep speaking lack, the universe keeps the temperature at scarcity. Raise your words, and you raise your entire experience. Now, here's where it gets even more powerful, and this is something people rarely talk about. Your words don't just affect your future, they're actively rearranging your present moment. When you speak words of faith and expectancy, you're not just hoping for something better down the road. You're actually shifting your vibration right now, in this very moment, and that shift changes what you're magnetizing to you immediately. I've watched this happen in real time. A woman came to me drowning in debt, terrified of opening her mailbox. Every bill felt like a dagger. I told her, stop speaking about what you owe. Start thanking God for your financial freedom as if it's already done. She thought I was crazy, but she did it. Every single day, she'd say, thank you for my financial freedom. Thank you that all my needs are met abundantly. Within 30 days, an aunt she barely knew passed away and left her exactly enough money to clear every debt she had. Now, did her words kill her aunt? Of course not, don't be ridiculous. But her words aligned her with the infinite channels through which her good could reach her. She stopped blocking her prosperity with fear talk and opened the floodgates with faith talk. That's the invisible mechanism at work. Your words remove the barriers you've unconsciously constructed. They signal to the universe, I'm ready now. I'm open now. I believe now. And belief, my friend, is the bridge between the invisible and the visible. Your words build that bridge. Plank by plank, syllable by syllable. Every morning when you wake, before your feet touch the floor, you have a choice. You can speak life, or you can speak death. You can affirm abundance, or complain about lack. Most people stumble out of bed and immediately begin rehearsing their problems. I'm so tired. I don't want to go to work. I can't afford this. Nothing ever works out for me. And so they set the entire day on a foundation of defeat. But what if you began differently? What if your first words were, something wonderful is going to happen to me today. I am guided, I am provided for, divine intelligence goes before me, making straight and easy my path. Can you feel the difference? Can you sense how the very atmosphere around you shifts when you speak with authority and expectation? I've watched people transform their entire existence simply by changing what they say during the first hour of their morning. One woman I knew was drowning in debt, overwhelmed, barely able to function. Every morning, she would wake and immediately begin calculating what she owed, worrying about bills, speaking about how broke she was, and of course, more debt kept appearing. It was all she could see. Then, she made a decision. She started every morning by saying out loud, "Money comes to me easily and frequently. I am a magnet for abundance. All my needs are met abundantly." She felt foolish at first. Her bank account certainly didn't reflect these words. But she persisted. Day after day, she spoke it. And something remarkable happened. Within 3 weeks, an old friend contacted her about a job opportunity she'd never considered. Within 2 months, she received an unexpected tax refund she'd forgotten about. Within 6 months, her income had doubled, and she was making payments on her debt with ease. The money didn't fall from the sky, but the opportunities, the ideas, the connections, they all appeared when she changed her words. You see, your words don't just describe your reality. They prescribe it. They write the prescription for what you will experience. And the universe, being the perfect pharmacy, fills that prescription exactly as written. So I ask you today, what prescription are you writing? What are you ordering from the infinite storehouse? Because it's listening. It's always listening. And it's always saying yes to whatever you persistently speak and believe. This is your power. This is your dominion. Not over other people, not over circumstances you cannot control, but over the one kingdom you were given to rule your own consciousness, your own mouth, your own vibration. Take back that throne.